I think it really shows how most of our lives are not linear. How we get where we go is not a straight path at all, ever, for any of us.
Hello, and welcome to the Career Flipper podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Dempsey, just a regular human trying to make sense of this wild ride called life, 1 or 5 plot twists at a time. This whole podcast thing, started after I got laid off from my customer experience tech job. Then I couldn't find a new job, and I had to get real scrappy. So I started restoring junk furniture and selling it. I then started asking people how they made big life and career changes because I felt so weird. Like, who goes from tech to covered in paint and sawdust in the garage with furniture they pulled off the curb? And honestly, their stories helped me feel a lot less alone. So I thought, why not share the good stuff with you too? This is really the space for all of us who've ever sat at our desks thinking, is this it? As another meeting pops on the calendar that should totally be an email, but you've dared to imagine something different, and you're not crazy, you're not alone, and you can do it. You can figure it out, but it's probably going to be messy, it's going to take a while, and you may get some raised eyebrows, but these episodes every week from people around the world who've actually done it are proof that it can be done. Today's episode features Jenna Leveille from Phoenix, Arizona. From leaving home with her parents not too thrilled and traveling with the Renaissance Festival, to studying zoology, to becoming the freaking Deputy State Cartographer of Arizona, Jenna's career path is a masterclass in following curiosity and rolling with the unexpected, even as she sleeps under the stars in the forest on the festival grounds. She now works as the VP of State and Local Government Strategy at Sanborn Mapping Company, and throughout it all, she reminds us how community, flexibility, and trusting yourself can take you places you didn't even know existed. What I love most about Jenna's story is that it proves that you don't always need to know exactly where you're going. Sometimes, like Jenna, you just write the damn map yourself. Let's get into the episode now. Hello, Jenna. It's so great to have you here on the Career Flipper. Thank you so much for joining.
Hi, Jenny. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you. I am so glad that our mutual friend, Frank, connected us because you have an incredible flip, one that I think a lot of people wouldn't expect. And so I'm really excited to hear you talk about it and share, how you went from point A to point B. But Jenna, first tell everybody where you are and what you do now.
Okay. So I am the VP of State and Local Government in the Business Development and Strategy section of Sanborn Mapping Company. Essentially what I do is strategy around geospatial and helping solve problems in the geospatial industry. I love it. It's a recent change for me to be in this position. Previously, I was the Deputy State Cartographer for Arizona State Land Department, and I coordinated geospatial data across the state. So now it's really nice to kind of, be adjacent to what I was. I can sit in my sweet spot and do the things that I'm really good at. So I'm really enjoying it. I've been with Sanborn now for a little more than 6 months, and it's going well.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And does everyone stop and ask you for directions? Are you the one who everyone goes to?
No, thank goodness.
That's so funny. I had to ask that. I could not resist. Well, you've had, even just recently, some very sometimes they're called flips, slides, glides, whatever we call them. There's been transitions for your career. And so let's just get into it. How did you start with your career, Jenna? Where did you begin?
Oh, goodness. We have to go back further than what I'll probably admit in years. And it's not linear. How I ended up in GIS and geospatial technologies was really kind of a happy accident. But I think at least what we've talked about before this was where I was before I ended up in GIS. And it it's one of those stories that I haven't told often, but the few folks that I've told have been like, "Oh my goodness, you came from where?" Um, so I took a non-traditional path out of high school. Um, I I was always the A plus student and always very interested in academics when I was in high school, and quickly got burnt out before I ever reached college. There were life things that happened because that is what happens when you're that age. And I really was looking for something different. And I, by happenstance, ended up traveling with the Renaissance Festival. And I did that for 8 years. And I think some people have exposure to the sort of national um, scenario. I don't know, national Renaissance Festival network, because there are many in all the states. So some folks are aware of that. What they might not be aware of is that they are kind of connected, although they all stand alone. So the people that travel, there is a faction of people that travel from Renaissance Festival to Renaissance Festival. So I was with that faction of people. And what that meant was that I lived very rustically for 8 years. Initially, I only had stuff that would fit on public transportation, and I lived in a tent for 2 years. No running water, no electricity, and my stuff, my two bags that fit everything was my costumes, my camping gear, my everything. Everything just fit. And I learned about the nation. I got to travel around and see things, and it was truly transformative. Enough that I stayed with it for 8 years before deciding to do something more mainstream. So it was really a different way to start my life. For sure. I would say that it provided me a foundation where I didn't have a lot of wanderlust when I started college because I had seen the country. Um, the way the Renaissance works is that most people that travel with it only work the weekend. So I had a lot of time to explore. Um, so I didn't have that piece. I didn't wonder what else was out there. But I also got this taste of a subculture where it was very inclusive and very, very tight. So I felt like I had experienced a tribe and that I had a different network of support. So I could go and do something totally different. Um, it took me 8 years to get there, but I was really excited when I did. So I don't know. What questions do you have about all that?
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, you went from being so you were the A plus student, and then I'm guessing there's lots of planning, like you had structure, and then you go into this world, or what I'll call is as it's a tribe, the environment where you were that, yes, on the weekends it sounds like, because essentially it is a business and you worked as a vendor, right? And then you had structure there, but throughout the week and like where you slept and how you lived on the daily was very and I'm just assuming it sounds very unstructured. Do you remember at that point like what that transition was like at first when you kind of joined the tribe, you're in that, new environment? Because I think a lot of us sometimes, when we do kind of shift, whether it's, a full flip or if it's just going into something new, there's always that kind of, I don't know what you'd call it. It's just like a little bit of a transition period and it can get a little, I don't know, you get a little scrappy and can be uncomfortable. Did you experience any of that? Or was it kind of just like, I'm here, I'm free, I'm young, I'm like doing all this stuff? Like, what was that like?
Well, um, yes, it was different. It was very different. I would start with it was before cell phones. So we weren't all connected in the way that we are now with cell phones where, like my mom couldn't find me if I mean, it was hard for her to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
Um, I would say I was in the stage in my life that I think a lot of young people are at 18 where you don't know enough to be scared. You don't know enough to be uncomfortable, so to speak. You're just very interested in exploring, and it's all very interesting, right? So I think like the day-to-day living was way different than what I was accustomed to. I came from middle class, all my needs were met, um, to living in dirt, literally, and figuratively, no heat, no running water. So there were things that were not easy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep your food cold? Yeah. How do you cook? How do you do all of those things? So there were definite things that were uncomfortable, but it was all an adventure. I didn't know enough to know that this was hard. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I was surrounded by really interesting people,
Mm-hmm.
and I was really curious. So, well, yes, when I think back, there were challenges, and now I really love indoor plumbing, even still. Um,
Yeah.
I didn't think of it as a hardship. It was an adventure. It was wonderful. I think my mother thought it was a hardship. I
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure
Mm,
because she couldn't find me, couldn't talk to me, not unless I did that.
yeah. What did they say when you told them that this is what you're gonna do after high school?
No, no. This is not an option. Um, and I didn't give them a choice. I did it
Mhm.
anyway.
Yeah.
So, probably one of the most cathartic things that I don't even think I really understood at that age was selling everything. Because even at 18, 17, you have stuff, because
Mhm.
you grow up with stuff, right?
Yeah.
And liquidating my life into 2 bags because that was what I could get on
Mm,
public transportation was eye-opening. All the things you don't need. One of my favorite parts of it, even still, I really thought through, like, what that meant because I had a whole bunch of things that I had to have. I had to have costuming, I had to have camping stuff, I had I
mhm.
had to have certain things.
Mhm.
Um But we all collect things because that's what humans do.
Mhm.
Uh, so I bought a little box. It was like a little, like, 8 by 6 box that
Mhm.
was empty. It was this little wooden carved box.
Mhm.
Um, and that was what I allowed myself to collect,
Mhm.
anything that fit in that box. I still have that box, and I collected all sorts of things that were really important to me as I traveled.
Yeah.
And still, there are notes, there are rocks, there are things that are really precious memories to me in that box, and it was over 30 years ago that I stopped traveling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. That's special. And I will say the costumes. I've been to Renaissance fairs and I know just by watching, everyone dress up like there's a lot to a costume. I
there is.
mean, they look heavy. I remember trying one on there, you could go try on the dresses and what have you. First of all, they like cinch you up so tight, but then like the dresses are very heavy. So I am hearing you say, these 2 bags and you have this one box for special items that you collect over time, and, like, that's a lot to carry around. Yeah, that's a
Yep.
lot.
Yeah, and the costuming was grand, for sure.
Yeah.
And it depended on which show we were at, there were requirements for some shows, like,
Okay.
couldn't you had to have shirts down women had to have shirts down to their wrists and down to the ground, and you had to have multiple
Yeah.
skirts or dresses. You had to have a bodice, that's the cinched up part
Mm,
of it, so that you
mhm,
looked of the time that you were impersonating.
mhm.
Um, yeah, there was a lot to it. I didn't have a lot of resources, and obviously my family was like, what are you doing?" Um, so my grandmother and I made all of my costuming
Oh,
together.
wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I still have parts of that too.
Wow. So you take this kind of this early pivot and you go into something brand new and you find a community of people that it sounds like became a second family, and you have pieces from home, the things that you took, the things that you find along the way that became home along the way, but also this very special dress that you made with your grandma, and you do this for 8 years. And at what point, like, how does this change? Because it sounds like, and maybe I'm wrong, but I've gone to Renaissance fairs, it seems like, people of all ages work there, but it's like they all kind of do it for a long time. So what was that pivotal moment where you're like, I'm not doing this anymore? What changed for you?
I think it was a combination of things. I think it's similar to what makes anybody decide to do something different. My family, both of my parents were educators. So school was a really important thing. And even though I took a hiatus, I still knew that school was an important thing. Being educated would change your future. So that was kind of niggling in the back of my head. Um, I felt like I had lived without convenience for long enough. That was part of it too.
Yeah.
Um, so And I think my time had made me brave. Like, I really wasn't scared to try new things or go new places. Um, and I remember feeling like, okay, it's just time. I need to do something different. I think I want to go back to school. I think I want to be an adult.
Yeah.
Um, so it's interesting. I literally chose a spot on a map just because I had heard about it. Um, I had a friend that had lived there for a while, didn't live there at the time. Um, and I picked a spot and did a little bit of research. At that time, it was not, internet wasn't a big thing. Um, so I rented a room from an ad in a newspaper called Long Distance, and I had chosen Corvallis, Oregon. I had literally just picked it off a map and found an apartment that I rented long distance. The landlord left the key under the mat, um, literally.
Trustworthy. Yeah.
Um, and I didn't have anything. I mean, like, stuff.
Mhm.
I didn't have a whole lot of stuff. I
Yeah.
didn't have tables or chairs or beds or any of that. I had some clothes.
Mhm.
So I showed up in Corvallis and got my key out from under the mat and was trying to figure out what was next. I didn't have, like, I hadn't applied to school. I hadn't done a whole lot of things, but I wanted to. So I moved to Corvallis and I figured it out. And I ended up in school. Um, and I I ended up at the end in it with a degree in zoology of all things. But I think it really shows how most of our lives are not linear. How we get where we go is not a straight path at all, ever, for any of us. I think the other thing that it really shows us or illustrates is that humans are adaptable. We can do whatever we want, really. We just have to figure out how to do that and be okay with discomfort, at least some. The Renaissance Festival taught me how to do that and that I was resilient. So it was okay that I didn't know anybody, that I went to a town where I had to find my way and figure out what that path was. That was okay.
Mhm.
I think that too scared my parents.
Mhm.
Like, holy cow, she's doing it again.
They weren't impressed at this point? I mean, the last day you got, I feel like that's like such an impressive skill set to build when you're that young. Like,
I think they were grateful I was still alive and
okay.
hadn't and nothing horrible had happened at that point. I think they were pleased that I intended to go back to school. I still hadn't quite gotten there, but
Yeah.
once I got into school, then they were really pleased and proud because that was a big
Mhm.
deal. Um, and probably stopped holding their breath for a little while, you know? I think it
Yeah.
really scared my mom. Like, "You mean I can't talk to you and I don't know where you are and where I would look if," you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I so yeah, I think they were cautiously optimistic by the time I landed in Corvallis. Hmm.
And then you majored in zoology.
Yeah.
And did you do anything in that for like after you graduated, or did you just, what happened at that point?
Well, I was a kid still. I was an older kid, non-traditional college student.
Mhm.
Um but I still had grandiose dreams. I was going to save the world. It was through conservation. I was going to save it all. Um, so I was looking for a way to do that through it. I intended to go into biology. By happenstance, I ended up in zoology, which isn't far off from biology, but still.
Yeah.
Um, I was really good at hard science stuff. I was really good at chemistry. I was really good at biology. So that was the interest. Um, so because I was going to save the world and I was naive, um, there was an ad for an internship opportunity at a place called the Conservation Biology Institute. And I thought, oh, that's the perfect fit. I can save the world. This is going to
Yes.
work.
Yes.
And so I got the internship. And the first day when I started, turns out that CBI, that was what they were called. That's what they're still called. They're still working. It was a nonprofit, and they did all this analysis of habitat and the state of things, so to
Hmm.
speak, of our natural world and otherwise,
Hmm.
with maps. And it was still really new. GIS was a very new technology. We were working in a command line environment. It was not a GUI environment at all. And they taught me how to make maps and how to do analysis and how to use the tools available through GIS. And it was just creative enough and just geeky enough with data that I fell in love. I couldn't get enough.
Hmm.
Um, and somehow I was still going to save the world, but I was going to do it through maps. Um, my first project out the gate was to work on something called the Protected Areas Database and essentially establish a baseline for that. So map where all the protected areas are in the contiguous US and then give value to that. So assess them as far as how they're managed for whatever it is.
Hmm.
Is it completely conserved? Is it managed for resources? What is it?
Hmm.
And there was a methodology to that. So I put the first one together. Now, what's really interesting is that that program was purchased by USGS and USDA. I think it was maybe it's USDA. They now partner with Idaho University, and it's a program that is huge. It's well funded. There's lots of people involved. There's a state steward for each state, and they started with the data I created, and it's all built from that. And so, yeah, it's really neat to talk to the people that now run the program because they're doing amazing, amazing things. And it's a data set that's used heavily across all kinds of disciplines. So it's really neat to see it like 25 years later, like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
this really has grown and how cool it is to have that connection. So I didn't stay at CBI very long. I got the skills to use the tools, and that led me to Arizona and the Arizona State Land Department. They liked me because I could map. That was, and I understood how to do that pretty meticulously. So they needed somebody who could map parcels in Arizona.
I'm calling my ads gentle nudges because I am not a salesperson. But anyways, I wanted to share a resource for you. And, if you're feeling stuck in your career and you're listening to this and you're like, but I don't even know where to begin. Obviously, you're not alone, even if it feels like it. But sometimes saying these things and talking about them out loud can really open up like a helpful can of worms. A kind that says, gosh, maybe there is something more out there for me. And I wanted to welcome you to a platform called mentors.cx. CX stands for customer experience, but at mentorscx.com, you can book a one-on-one session with me to chat about where you're at now, where you might want to go, and just start sorting through the flippin' fog together. There's no pressure, there's no perfect plan. It's honestly just a space to explore and ask questions. You can also check out the other incredible mentors while you're there, talking about customer experience, business, and more. Visit www.mentors.c as in customer, x as in x-ray.com today to book a session. All right, let's get back to Jenna and the episode now.
So that's what I did. And I ended up there as an entry-level GIS person and eventually became the deputy state cartographer for Arizona. Eventually.
Wow. And then how many years did you do that?
I was with the state for almost 19 years.
19 years. And it was just in the last 6 months that this was the change to what you're doing now. Is that right?
To the private sector. Yep.
Wow. That's impressive. You wanted to go out into the world and you wanted to save it and you wanted to make an impact, and you did. You made an impact. It's the ripple effect is still rippling today.
Right.
And that's impressive. And all those individuals in those roles, the steward roles in every state, they have their own life and their own story of what led them there. And you essentially created that part in their story. I don't know. I just think that that's incredibly impressive that you went from not really knowing what you wanted to do and kind of, in the Renaissance festivals and, living this very, very different, experience outside in nature and working with people who come to these fairs and traveling around and finding your tribe to, no, I'm just gonna go to school and I'm gonna move to a city that I find on a map, and I'm not going to see the apartment before I move in. I'm just going to show up and grab the key from under the mat, and I have 2 bags with me. And I think that, what you said about, things aren't linear and there is power to being a little naive. I think that there is there's a positive side to that, which I kind of have experienced in my own story, but I kind of feel like you bring it up in such a way where it's like, yeah, you didn't maybe have the life experience or the knowledge, but it sounds like it didn't hold you back because you're like, I didn't know. And it doesn't sound like there was ever a time, Jenna, where you didn't believe in yourself, or where you didn't not believe in yourself, or you didn't think for any moment, I can't do this. Or what am I wrong? Because I don't think I heard that throughout your story, that there was a time where maybe you felt scared or maybe something, but did you ever not believe in yourself?
Oh, sure. Sure. I think, when we think back on our stories, right? We tend to gloss over the hard parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there were definite hard parts and parts where I feel like the outcome helped me find myself better. I was definitely scared. I didn't always know what the next step was. I think everybody goes through when they may not have enough resources, when they are creative in the way that they support themselves. Part of my story in there that overlap both the Renaissance Festival and school and kind of later career, if I quote unquote, I got Lyme disease. And that led me on a whole other thing. I was really sick for a while. I had to learn how to ask for help. I had to learn how to navigate the medical system, which is still broken. And I had to learn that I was resilient from that perspective and determined. And it was really scary at times. What I learned was that, and I'll preface this with, that whole long journey included multiple surgeries. I ended major surgeries with my back, lots of challenge. The outcome is great. I'm better than I was even in my 20s, physically, as far as that goes. But what I really learned was that our communities are the key. Our people are the key. And it was really hard, and I think it still is really hard for a lot of people to ask for help and to be honest about where you're at. And I found myself in a predicament where I needed a lot of help, and I was single. My parents were far away. My biological family, my immediate nuclear family was not able to do it all by any means. And so I had to be really honest and really vulnerable and ask specifically for what I needed. What I learned is that people will do it.
Hmm.
People will step up if they know what you need. If you ask and allow them to help you, people will do that. And I was very, very fortunate. I had very gracious people in my life that gave me a lot and helped me tremendously to overcome some physical challenges that were really scary. Um, and it was important that I asked. It made a difference for them to be able to give because that's part of who we are as social beings. We want to contribute to others and their well-being. So I gave them the opportunity to do that.
Hmm.
I also learned how important it was to be vulnerable and to let yourself be caught when you need it. I couldn't have done it without the village I had.
Yeah. That is a very important reminder because it is easier said than done to ask for help. Many of us aren't taught that. It's a lot of the opposite. I know it's what we learned from watching our parents or maybe what our parents kind of, or whoever, just society in general. You ask for help, oh, you're greedy. Oh, this or that. But it's at the end of the day, we have to. And to be able to ask for help and then also when the tables are turned to be able to give that
Yeah.
help to someone else is incredibly powerful and important and necessary. And to hear that that was part of your journey and such a, I mean, that's a very serious medical, situation that you were in. And to be able to ask for that help, not really, I mean, maybe you knew, but also I wonder, was there a point where you're like, I don't know what the next thing is like after all of the, navigating the crazy medical system and all of these things, like how much time some things take or how we heal or what we actually need. Sometimes we don't know. And putting it out there to get that help from your community it says a lot about who you are. And, you know, that's that's really cool. To put it lightly, that's incredibly cool. And I appreciate you sharing that.
I really think of it as an opportunity. It helped shape who I am. And I am incredibly grateful for the people that stepped up and am also very willing to step up because I know, one of my friends at one point, I hadn't spoken. This was a person that I was close to when I was pretty sick, and he helped me an awful lot, um, both emotionally and mentally. He was definitely like a father figure to me. Um, he had, like, we hadn't had communication in like 10 years. And I got an email out of the blue. And in it, he said, "You never really know how you impact others. So you have to be careful what your choices are and how you interact with people because you impact people every day, whether you want to or not.
Hmm.
And you don't know, like you were saying, the ripples, you don't know where that goes. And sometimes you'll never know where that goes." What he was sharing with me was that I had impacted his life in ways that I never anticipated that were really positive.
Yeah.
And he said it like 10 years after we had had any communication.
Yeah.
And that really opened my eyes. I I really do think about all of the unknown stories, right? We never know what somebody's going through. We never know what the challenges are. We never really know, right?
Yeah.
So if we aren't kind, if we aren't open and give people the room to ask
Mhm.
and to receive,
Yeah.
you know, we lose opportunities. So I want to be there. I want to be the one to give somebody the benefit of the doubt, to know that my impact, I may never know, but I want it to be good at, as much as possible. So I try to come from a place of love. I try to come from a place of kindness because I've needed it too. And I've been very grateful for the kindness that I've received. So I want to be that. It makes the world a better place. And we need that. Our world needs that.
Very, very well said. Jenna, on that same note, if there is someone who was maybe sitting at their desk and they're feeling, I don't know, burnt out or stressed, or they know they want to make a change, but they're just not sure what. And they're maybe scared or they're afraid to ask for help. What advice would you give someone in a situation like that based off of, what you've learned along the way?
I think maybe the hardest and easiest thing at the same time is to tap your network, talk to people, and trust that you'll be cared for. So ask for what you need and talk to people. Find out where there's opportunity. Go to the people, like, depending on what someone's thinking about, right? You never know. But there are resources, and most people, if asked, if it's an email, if it's a LinkedIn message, most people will respond.
Hmm.
Vast majority of people are good people.
Yeah.
And I would say lean into your network and be open to possibility. I think that's part of what makes things less scary. Say yes. Say yes when you're asked. Do the things that, "Wow, I never thought about doing that, but maybe that's a cool idea." Say yes. Find find furniture on the side of the road and make it beautiful. And
But yes.
'cause you don't know. You don't know where it might lead. So I think take the risks that you're okay with, and lean in to your network, lean into your people. If you feel like you don't have people, find them because they're there. You never know.
Mhm.
They're there for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's so it's so true because you never know. Like, it's just sometimes these conversations that you have with people out of the blue, someone will say something and it just like a light bulb goes off and it's
Yeah,
never thought of it that way. And it could have been something that you've heard 10,000 other times from other people, which it's just like that way that that one person worded it. I don't know. I feel like there is so much power in just continuing, even if you think you sound like a broken record, even if you think you sound out of control. Like when I don't know, you mentioned the furniture. Yeah. But people are like, Where'd you get that from?" Yeah, literally picked it up by the trash dump. Like, uh-huh, that's easy. They're wait, what? Like, and
right.
I just don't care anymore. Like that's, if that's how you're gonna judge, then whatever. But all the same is like we have to look for the opportunities and things that we may not think opportunities exists. And I think
Right.
talking to others and yeah, and just these conversations, you never know. So I
You
love
never know.
love that.
Yeah. So that's actually perfect. So I read a lot, both fiction and nonfiction. I read all sorts of things. And yesterday I was reading a book, and there was this excerpt from it that really fit with this conversation.
Yeah.
Um, so it says, maybe life is just 1,000 opportunities to step into different versions of ourselves. Perhaps it's like trying on new shoes. Eventually, we settle on something fresh and new while still returning to our old favorites time and time again. So it's all part of like building on ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Just settles and opportunities to reinvent ourselves, to do something different, to try something new,
Right.
and just
Right.
see.
Right. Oh, I love that excerpt. Thank you for reading that. Yeah, it really is true. You never know until you just slide on that shoe if it's going to fit or not. And I think that's, I mean, right there, we can all take away something important from that because whether we're flipping to something completely new or just like sliding into something and maybe a different role with the same company. Like either way, that transition period can be a little tricky, and we could try it. And then if we don't, we go back to the old shoes. But otherwise, we could just keep going like, ooh, these are actually really comfy, but I never would have known had I not put them on. But
Right it on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think you were asking about advice. I think the other thing that I think is really important for us as humans is to give of our time. So I think, especially in a period of our lives, if there's uncertainty or, looking at transition, I would volunteer. Find something,
Mm-hmm.
some place to volunteer. Give of yourself and give of your time. Everybody has expertise. Everybody has something to offer.
Yeah.
But I think that gets us in the right mindset to say yes,
Yeah.
right? To give back, and impact something. Do something. It doesn't even matter what it is, but there are lots of opportunities to do that. And I think the times in my life that I volunteered a lot, it's really rewarding, and it's helped me to shape more of my internal dialogue on who I am, where I want to focus,
Mm-hmm.
how I want to make an impact. I think that's huge. I
Yeah.
think that's really big.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Totally. By giving our time, we're kind of in a way just giving ourselves more time to learn about who we are. I think that that's like, it's very reciprocal. We think we're giving, and then there are things that come back, but we continue to give. And that, even if it's the tiniest little, I don't know, you're like an admin volunteer job, everything makes an impact. Yeah, volunteer, and they always need people.
Yeah,
Nonprofits always need people, so there's
there's
all.
always opportunities.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yep.
absolutely. Jenna, speaking of opportunities, this has been quite the opportunity for me to have you on. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you? How can they connect with you and learn more about the wonderful person you are?
Aw, um, thank you. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate the discussion. It's one of those say yes moments for me.
Mhm.
Um, so I appreciate that. Probably the best place for folks to find me is LinkedIn. And I'll share my LinkedIn address with you. I am always open for conversations and opportunities. So I hope to connect.
I love it. Jenna, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And thank you again for giving your time.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thanks for hanging out with me and Jenna on today's episode of the Career Flipper podcast. If you want to connect with Jenna or dive deeper into her journey, all the links are waiting for you over in the show notes. If you got a career flip story of your own, I want to hear it. Head over to www.thecareerflipper.com to share your story. You might just end up on a future episode. And hey, wherever you are in your journey, just remember, every tiny, awkward, brave little step matters, even the ones that feel like detours. So go on, my friend. What's the best that could happen?